What's going on, everybody? It's Childish. We're back at it again. We got ourselves the next episode of Educate and Dominate, that one-on-one interview series where we take some of the top names of the game and get their insights so we can bring your game to the next level. My next guest, as you guys know, is in finishing off with me the episode number 5 of the Operation Midgame Educate and Dominate series, focused on mid-game content for you viewers out there. So we have ourselves Onceinluv. How are we doing today, sir?
Doing good. How are you doing today?
Good, good. What is the choice of beverage for you today?
Tea.
Tea. Okay. I have my Yahoo coffee cup here today, so we're running coffee. No monsters today. So if you guys been watching the episodes, as you guys know, we've been doing our different drinks, the sponsored drinks that we've been doing. But if you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. Okay. So we got ourselves 5 different episodes focusing on giants, TOA, dragons, Rifter Worlds, and now finish it off with Necropolis here. Gosh, there's so many things to talk about. We got a lot of things to hit up. First and foremost, let's talk about the boss 4 requirements. You want to hit those up?
Yeah. Let's start up this Necro run, and then we can talk about stage 3, and we can talk about stage 5 as we get there.
Okay.
But so the main thing with the Necropolis, first of all, it's dark element. Except for the crystals. Crystals have no elements in Kairos Dungeon. They're neutral element to all. Something notable about the golems, they can AoE stun, or the crystals can AoE stun you, and the golems have reflect damage. So using really heavy nukes, not necessarily the best idea, but there are ways to mitigate that. So here we are in stage 3. For those of you who don't know, this boss is Grigo, the Dark Lich. Grigo's first skill is a multi-hit slow debuff, and his second skill is an AoE random targeting after the first target, I believe, for defense break. So Grigo's passive works in that if you kill units, or ally units or enemy units, he gains a lot of attack power, as well as the inflicted damage to him and the recovery for him. So heals, stuff like that. Vampire runes are halved. This is usually the toughest stage for most people. This stage is pretty scary sometimes. You know, this boss can very easily one-shot a unit. If he defense breaks a unit on the first hit and hits it again, there's a good chance he could hit for like 18k total.
Yeah, I don't even know how many times I've actually tried to do certain runs with previous teams, even sometimes with this team if I don't get caught right, and I ended up wiping on this one or losing a unit, which in turn sometimes end up wiping depending on what the unit is. So yeah, it's not too fun. It makes that 1.5 minute run go to like 2.5 ish. Yeah,
2.5, 3 sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep running through this. Ways to mitigate this boss's damage. Of course, attack break, defense buff can help. Shield sets, you know, everything in general that just mitigates damage is pretty helpful for this stage. Usually, if you're not running a really safe team, people will just nuke the stage as fast as they can. They'll run heavy attackers, Lucians, Teshars, Pernas, etc. Something that can mitigate the amount of time you spend on the stage.
Gotcha. So as we move into stage 5, we're going to have a lot of different things that people are not going to consider. One of those is speed. What's the whole deal with regards to the speed?
So when you look at the boss over the passive, I believe it is the 3rd one. Yes, the Time of the Dead passive. The attack speed of all enemies and allies is suppressed and cannot exceed a certain cap. Also, skill effects that influence the attack bar will not be activated. Verd does not work in the stage. You cannot gain attack bar by any means. You cannot gain them with an Oracle's first skill. You cannot gain them with a Monkey King's second skill. You cannot use Verd. You cannot use Bernard. You also cannot attack bar reduce for the same reason. But when it talks about the speed cap, the actual speed cap is 130 speed. So basically, your units, if they're above 130 speed, will be limited to 130. It's similar to how Leo works, except that the fastest unit before the speed reduction will go first. So for you, you have your Colleen going first because she's the highest speed on your team.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess let's just go through the skills of the boss and all of his passives before we move into ways to build around it. Right. So if we look at the first skill, First skill is Exploit Soul. Attacks all enemies, recovering 50% of the damage dealt as HP. This skill also increases the boss's damage permanently every time the skill is used. Necro, unlike giants and dragons, is the only Kairos boss that gets stronger over time, which makes safe runs questionable sometimes because you cannot go over a certain amount of time. You will actually just lose. You won't be able to deal enough damage as he steals your HP, even if you run a lot of healers.
Gotcha.
So the second skill, the boss imprisons a soul. So he steals a unit. If you look under your attack order settings, you can set it so that your units will attack the imprisoned soul first before the boss. Usually people run imprisoned soul and then boss, but there are some compositions that can run straight boss if you have enough shield breakers, regardless if a unit gets stolen. So the way the steal works is that he will take a unit and he will refresh their skills only when used against you. So let's say you're using something like a Perna. Your Perna has died and revived. Your passive is now on, let's say it's on a 6-turn cooldown now. If the boss steals Perna will instantly gain the passive back. So you have to kill Perna twice. Or with Theomars, you have to proc Endure. So it's generally good to keep in mind which unit is going to be dealing the most damage, because the unit that deals the most damage is going to be the one that gets stolen.
Gotcha.
When you do kill that unit, it returns to you with 50% HP, and the steal does actually go through immunity and invincibility, for those who were wondering.
Right on. And so kind of going back to one of the things that you were saying with regards to the turn order or whatnot, or sorry, not the turn order, but the speed. The cap is at 130 now. I'm sure I might be talking about this later, but as far as the swift buff that you can get off of certain units or whatnot, is that going to play a factor in this particular thing or no?
By swift buff, do you mean a speed buff?
Speed buff, yes.
Yes, speed buff is one of the two ways to deal with this speed. One is going to be speed buff, and the other one is going to be slow debuff on the boss.
Gotcha. I was going to say,
we can go into more depth with that afterwards.
Right. I remember when Necropolis first came out, we had a lot of people trying to get additional turns, but they didn't have any units to give them that speed buff. So they were like putting Bernard on like a violent set with no speed, or whatever. They were getting him with speed, but not like a crazy amount of speed. They were trying to get more turns on him. It was crazy. Whatever you could do to get that first Necropolis P10 clear, let me tell you something.
That's all about that LD scroll.
You know it. Alrighty, so we took a look at the first and second skills here, as well as the third. Now, what about this fourth skill?
Okay, so Soul Barrier works this way. The boss every time the boss gets a turn, he puts up a shield, which, it's not actually a shield, it's a barrier because it's a passive. So what happens is it takes 7 hits to break the shield, and then after you've broken the shield, you can start doing damage to the boss. When you start hitting the boss, only 30% of your damage dealt will affect his max HP. So this boss actually has not that much HP. It's the thing is that you can only deal so much damage to him. So of course you don't mitigate you don't lower your own damage output for this, but you have to realize this is why you're not hitting some of these crazy numbers that you're used to seeing.
Right. And so with regards to the Soul Barrier and having the 7 hits, I mean, it's obvious that the use of multi-hits is going to be very, very beneficial in this mix. I do want to give a quick shout out to ComToUs. For those that are a little bit more old school, they know exactly what I'm talking about here. Sometimes when we bring out new content, some people can get a little upset because they, have to, make, a handful of new units to do a particular dungeon. But as you guys might have guessed, if they didn't make these dungeons creative in nature, then I think the game would be pretty boring. So I actually really enjoyed when this first came out, because I really had to think about it and figure out what I wanted to do when it comes to this. So the multi-hit effect, what are we starting out with as far as your recommendation for team compositions and whatnot?
So, all right, let's go. Well, do you want to do team composition first, or do you think we should go over how to counter the boss's skills itself? Actually, I think team composition is a good opportunity to go first. You're right. I'm going to go with a really, really safe, free-to-play team. So the starting team recommendation roles I usually suggest people is, and this is assuming your runes aren't really quality, because if you have really quality runes, you might be able to just skip the super safe starting team. But I really like running a light tank, an attack buffer, a slow debuffer, a defense break, and at least 2 multi-hit units, sometimes 3. And I actually do like running a speed buff as well. So something in my most common suggested free-to-play team is going to be Shangfei, the panda, Fire Panda, Belladon, or Belladon, sorry, for the people that corrected me in the first video, Adrian, Colleen, and something like Iselia, which is the Fire Fairy.
We got Belladon, and you said the Fire Fairy? Ooh,
Yes,
dusted it off.
Fire Fairy. So this is definitely not an ideal team. This is like a 100% free-to-play team, easy to obtain units, 3 stars or lower, or fusible.
I'm trying to see where she's hiding here. Where's she hiding?
Middle row left.
Oh my God! There you go. Love it. This was actually my first Awaken 4 my first Awaken 4-star. She's a beast.
Nice. So the reason I picked these units, so going down the list in order, Shangfei is a tanky unit. He's got a built-in pseudo heal that also gives him a revenge buff. He also runs multi-hits on both of his attacks, and has the chance to land random debuffs on top of the defense break. Very tanky, fusible, easy to rune, does not have to be violent as well, and can be used in raids, so very effective unit to build in general. Another nice thing about Shangfei, does not actually need skill ups. Works quite well without skill ups.
Gotcha. What's the next unit you got?
Belladon. So everyone knows Belladon. You know, first skill def break. Looking for Inu SD. 39 out of 40 pieces. Please that. We'll remove after.
The greatest line of all time. It gets so old, but man, everyone knows what's up.
Classic. So first skill defense break. Second skill, not really important for this. Third skill, AoE heal plus gauge. That gauge increase will not work in the boss stage, but it does work in every other stage. Speed is only capped in the boss stage, and the attack bar gain and attack bar reduction mitigation where it doesn't work is only in the boss stage, guys. So Bella, I suggest because you've already got one built likely. It's on violent, and it's probably decently ruined, as well as it's a light tank. That Grigo in the third stage that one-shots your units, it's likely going to target Bella because element advantage. So this is a unit I would definitely suggest in a starting team. Some people run Darien because you get that attack break, but I like Bella because of the heals.
Right, and keeping the fact that it's even though it's you don't get to use that attack bar at the very end, the fact that its heal is relatively smart, it's not going to be used until I believe your one of your members is like under 50% or something like that.
It's about 50. It's about 50%.
About 50%. So really smart heal for a zone like this. I like it.
Yeah. Third unit would be Adrian, which is the Fire Elven Ranger. So Fire Elven Ranger has a few nice things. First of all, the first skill when you awakened is strengthened to do more than one hit according to your crit rates. So I like to run this unit above 70 crit rate. Ideally, I just run a crit rate slot 4 because I'm lazy, but you can run him on crit damage if you have enough crit rate elsewhere from your runes. HP block on first skill, continuous damage on second skill with 4 hits, and a really low cooldown 3-turn speed buff and crit rate buff on third skill, which is pretty nice actually. I believe it is on a 4-turn cooldown at max skills, or maybe 3. I think it's 4.
I think it's 4. I think you're right. 4.
Yeah. Adrian overall pretty great unit. Brings a lot of things. A lot of people don't see HP block as being so important, but if you're not running shields or lots of continuous damage, HP block can be very beneficial. So the boss does not heal for lots.
Gotcha. And have you played around? I know you were talking about like a crit rate versus crit damage. Have you played around with the crit damage build and seen what kind of damage it can put out with regards to its multipliers?
Adrian puts out about as much as my Shihua does, and my Shihua's max skilled as well.
There you go. Next
unit would be Colleen, for sure. Colleen is amazing. You've already built a Colleen for raids. You've seen the last video. You can run her non-violent. It's totally acceptable in Necro. I use my raid Colleen, which is non-violent, single revenge set. But you have attack break multi-hit first skill, multi-hit HP block second skill, AoE heal and attack buff third skill. Pretty clear-cut, basic. Colleen's great. Later on could be possibly replaced by a Hwaki, ideally max skilled for more damage, but Colleen's still used in a lot of people's speed teams.
Yep, for sure. Actually, that's what I said. I still use it too, so yeah. Right on.
And so the last two units that I would suggest between are, so first of all, we have Iselia, the Fire Fairy, which, so her first skill is a multi-hit. Her second skill, I think, is a multi-hit stun, or it's a single target, or it hits 2 units at least, if I recall, her second skill. But on stuns if it hits the same unit, so it is a multi-hit. But the important part about using her is that her third skill is 4 to 6 hits with slow debuff chance for 2 turns. Although the chance is low, I believe it does increase with skill ups, and I think it reduces to 4 turns as well. Again, not ideal. You would ideally want a unit that slow debuffs on first skill, but this is just the free-to-play team.
Right.
The last unit I would consider suggesting is Sarah, which is the Water Cowgirl. I don't usually suggest this unit because you have to get her with Guild Wars points, and I don't like when people do. When people spend their Guild Wars points on things that are not Ifrits and flags. But this unit has slow debuff on first skill. Her third skill hits 6 times and can go... I think it lands continuous damage.
Yes.
Which is pretty nice. Definitely underrated. But yeah, she does work. She can be effective.
And let's not forget that lovable leader skill for the attack bars. So
yes,
taking advantage of the universal leader skill there, or universal with respect to dungeons, and with regards to a neutral element, it's definitely a nice thing to do when you're mixing and matching these elements here. And so with regards to the units that you have recommended, similar to what we did in our first episode with the giant strategy, we kind of let out a basic guideline for the stat requirements when it comes to these units. Do you have something of the sort with regards to these units here? What do you think?
I like around 18k HP.
Okay, 18k HP.
And I like everyone over 110 speed. I like my damage healers under 130. I don't think it's really worth adding extra speed when I could just add extra damage.
Gotcha. And
unless you're not running a speed buff. If you're not running a speed buff, I like running them all around 130. It's not absolutely necessary, but it is quite nice in my opinion.
Gotcha. And with regards to kind of the chart you've kind of laid out with us in other episodes, we've been talking about a little bit on that glory shop and getting that speed tower at level 9 or whatnot. If we're having that 130 speed cap, do we need to be all the way up in that 130, or can we get there with that 110, 120-ish? Okay. I just want to make sure there.
So I guess going back to the glory towers, you probably, by this point, I would suggest having speed at 9 and crit damage at 10. You can do that all on your free-to-play gained wings from the weeks and weeks you've been doing all your wings because you're good and you care about your glory towers, not scrolls.
Yep. It's so hard, though. I gotta have those mystical scrolls.
Oh, not even elemental scrolls. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
But yes, something important to keep in mind with Necro is that turn order is crucial in Necro, more than it is in any other dungeon. I would honestly say turn order is more important in Necro than it is in Dragons, even though it is helpful for Dragons, it is not absolutely necessary. So the basic turn order is going to be attack buffer, shield breakers, defense break, and then the last roll is going to be your branding, damage dealers with slow debuff, something along those lines. So for you with your team, I'm guessing your order is probably Colleen, Shihua, Teshar, and then both Liches. Okay, Teshar goes before Shihua. That's probably better.
Yeah,
because then you can run through stages 1 through 4 faster.
Right. And so, one of the things that I was thinking about when it comes to runes, for those that don't know, I've actually talked with Onceinluv quite a bit on the side when it comes to Necro and trying to find that perfect kind of combination when it comes to violent or revenge. At this particular time, people have been, gathering those runes from giants and dragons, and they understand that violent is key. However, you have spoken with me on the side with regards to violent and non-violent units there. This may be a little bit over the top as far as the mid-game talk, but can you just break into it a little bit, your thought process on the use of violent versus non-violent at this level?
At the fastest term, in my opinion, I think if you're absolutely fastest, like you're at a FWA level, you probably want to run all your damage dealers on violent, all of them, including your shield breaker, because your shield breaker is probably going to be a high damage unit. So I believe FWA runs the exact same team as you, except he uses Wind Homunculus in place of Shihua for more damage. I believe he runs all of his units on violent and very, very strong. My suggestion for people who are going for about the 130 mark, I would probably run, if I was running this exact same team, I would run probably a Vampire or just a damage dealer Teshar with enough HP. I would run Vampire Revenge, Violent Revenge on both my Liches. I would run Triple Revenge or Double Revenge Shield on the Shihua, and Colleen can be whatever you built her for raids. Now the reason I say this is because likely your Shihua is not going to deal nearly as much damage as your other units, so her taking those extra turns could be detrimental to the speed of your run. But it is important that you get her revenge procs first skill as she is a really strong shield breaker.
Gotcha. And when it comes to going back to the stats and the runes there, we were talking about having that 18k mark for all those units. As you said before, you're initially going to start with that safe run, but you need to do work so that because obviously if you take too long, the potential of dying is going to increase. What's your take on those specific units with the use of the violent runes that we were talking about there? What would you recommend rune-wise for those units?
For which units? The units I was talking about?
Correct, the ones you recommended.
Changfei, Single Revenge, doesn't have to be violent, could be violent if you wanted. Bella, violent. Adrian, I really like on Violent Revenge. Colleen, minimum one revenge set, could be violent also. Sarah, Violent Revenge, and Acelia, Violent Revenge.
Right on, cool. And so kind of pushing back forward there, we talked about the save teams and whatnot. As far as all the units that are available to the people out there, especially if they're kind of mid to late game and maybe they've been fortunate enough to pull a few, what are your favorite units out there for Necropolis?
My favorite units. Okay, so there's a few things. So for me, it just comes down to ideal best units. My favorite team is always going to be Variants. The triple Helia, triple Fae, Huahi team is probably my favorite because it is so unique and so difficult to make and obtain that I think it has quite a good amount of finesse to it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the team you got here honestly is probably my favorite, except I replace Shihua with Rauk or Faye. Probably Rauk.
Yeah, I think I have him there. I stripped him a while back because I was playing around with like a triple revenge set on him and some other units out there, but yeah, I don't use them all too much. With that, for that Shiwa not having that second skill go off on the boss, it seems like I'm just getting so many additional multi-hits, and it kind of helps me balance out that Teshar since it's only a single hit or whatever. But
yeah, it's pretty nice.
Right on.
The next thing I wanted to talk about was how to actually deal with the boss's passives and its attacks. I think it's important that people understand the theory behind what works and what doesn't for, why we make teams with certain debuffs, why we make teams with certain skills. I feel like being able to understand the mechanics is probably the first part of theory crafting any type of team or moving forward to new teams if you're interested. So for my first Necro team, I believe I ran... Okay, this is really cheesy. I ran Lucian, Shihua, Adrian, Colleen, and Rauk. And no, actually no, I did not. I didn't run the Shihua. I ran Fuko in there, but I ran my Lucian on HP crit damage attack on Fatal, so he would have 19k HP and would not die on reflect damage.
I love it.
I wanted the faster runs. I wanted the faster runs.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I still remember to this day, like, people like second guessing Lucian's ability to help with the clears. I mean, and funny enough, he does work. I mean, that's the beauty of that neutral element. You can use just about anybody in there.
Yeah, the fun thing about that also was, and I know this is off topic, guys, but I used to use that when the RTA event came out, and I remember somebody defense broke my Lucian with a Galleon, and somebody tried to one-shot it with a Theo, hit for like 19.5k, didn't kill it, and just rage quit.
Oh my god.
People underestimate Tank Lucian. My Tank Lucian still hit for 8.5k a card without it, or 8.5k card with attack buff. So I mean, you don't absolutely need that attack slot too. HP slot works. But yeah, so back to the ways to counter the boss. So the ways to get around the speed cap, you have speed buff and slow debuff. Speed towers and speed leads are not affected. Let's see. His damage, his attack that heals. 2 ways to counter that. You can use HP recovery block, or you can use shields. So shield sets, or the other thing that works is running a unit that can give you a shield. I don't suggest units that give shields, but they can work. You can also mitigate it with attack break. You know, he only heals based on how much damage he does.
Right.
A really good way to deal with units getting stolen is running continuous damage. If he is about to use his soul protection, is about to use his soul steal, if he dies to a continuous damage, he loses his turn, and then you get to go. It can be super helpful. You can speed up your runs sometimes with that. Not always suggested for the faster runs, but it is never really a bad thing to have continuous damage. That's another thing that I really like about having both Xihua and Adrian. An important thing with running your team is if you have a really strong damage dealer, you need to make sure that damage dealer, if he gets stolen, is not going to one-shot your team. When the units get stolen, their runes get stolen with them. So if the boss steals my Fuko, he keeps his Violent Revenge set.
Ugh.
Which is
I hate it.
frustrating sometimes.
It is so frustrating.
I've seen him go 4 times before.
I still remember, shout out to Foil with time, I still remember the first time we were all clearing Necropolis B10, and of course, naturally, he sets up compositions, and then it's like, oh yeah, you should do this too. I'm like, we're not you, Foil, but it's all good. And he tried to recommend compositions with Theo, and at the time, for most of us, Theo was one of our best, rune units because we were so focused on Guild Wars. So naturally, I had no turn order, no syncing, and Theo would get pulled every single time, and I would essentially every time Theo gets pulled, I die because it takes too long to kill him, and he's just doing so much damage. Yeah, that endure, man, it gets me every time.
Yeah, it's frustrating. What else? The number one most important thing for me after turn order is multi-hits. Picking your runes accordingly. Violent Revenge runes are key. When you're starting to run speed teams, and even some safe teams, shield sets are really, really underestimated. You don't absolutely need Violent on every unit, so you could run like Revenge Shield or Revenge Shield. Those are really, really, really good and strong sets for Necro, especially if you're trying to run speed runs and you don't have Vampire units or high HP units.
Yep.
Speaking of which, Vampire is super strong. I actually currently run my Teshar on Vampire. Shout out to DJ KJK for his awesome second Teshar pull where he built his Teshar for Necro specifically with the Vampire build.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, this is, before I got Teshar, I did run at least, I did a double Lucian comp and a single Lucian comp. And when I did run the single Lucian comp, I had my Lucian on that Vampire set as well. Works really good. Either way, because he just does so much damage out there. It's easy to top him off.
So my recommendation for Vampire reduces the HP requirement by about 20 to 30% maybe.
Right.
But ideally, you still want above at least 13k. About 13k is really nice for HP.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else is really important? I guess there's not really too much else to starting teams. Like, if you can get the turn order and you can get the right rune sets, just remember, guys, that trying to make a starting team on plus 12 runes is not usually ideal. It's very difficult. You can do it, but it is not suggested.
Gotcha. 2 things. Let's take a look, actually, real quick. State your team one more time so we can show your units here.
Teshar, Faye, Colleen, Rauk, and Fuko. I'm working on my Rigel right now to replace either Faye or Rauk. I don't know yet.
Gotcha. And you said you're working on the Rauk right now?
No, I have the Rauk. I'm working on the Rigel.
Gotcha. Okay. I think the only thing you did such a good job with the content. The only thing that I want to ask is the concept of HP versus defense. We talked about stats and the requirement for HP. Because of the fact of the boss not having any skill that's going to defense break it, can we still get value if we can't get those HP requirements? Maybe we don't have the best runes for it. Can we make an effort to utilize a defense rune, or are we going to lose value if we're bringing like HP percentage based healers and stuff like that?
You can bring, more defense subs. It's usually ideal to run HP, especially because of that third stage. The third stage is really where the threat comes. It's not the first, second, fourth, or even the boss. The fear is that the Grigo is going to use second skill, defense break one of your units, and one-shot that unit afterwards,
Right.
like on the same hit. So
Yeah.
you can, but it has its counters. Defense always has its counters. That's why I always recommend a certain amount of HP, right? Like if you build a Ritesh, you don't build Ritesh with defense. You build Ritesh with HP because you don't want him to be one-shot by Lucians. You don't want him to be killed by Zyros builds. You want him to have enough HP because the defense break counters like adding defense. I know a lot of people are here for a starting team, but I'd actually like to talk about as well as how you can speed up your teams and ideal
sure.
units. Because a lot of people have these units, and these are definitely the better units in my opinion for Necro. But top units for me would be units like units that have a slow debuff and a defense break on first skill. So shout out to the Liches. We have Fuko, Rigel, and Grigo. Halfiz and what's the other one called? The fire one.
Oh my god. I'm the worst because I just summoned the fake 5 of him.
Those ones do not have the defense break on second skill. Those are not good for Necro in my opinion. Fuko, Rigel, Grigo, all great damage, decent scalings. Violent Revenge, really good. For absolute speedruns, Fuko and Rigel would be better, or double Rigel. Grigo is really strong because every time someone gets stolen, he gains a stack of his passive. Other units, strong attackers that slow debuff. This is going to be the Rakshasa family. Hua, Ran, Yen. Hua, you get the extra hit chance. Slow debuff on first. Ran, you get the extra violent proc chance. Or sorry, that's Yen. And then Ran, you can do the multi-hits and the slow debuff with an attack leader skill. With this also, I do want to make a small mention to something that was recently changed. The Jack-o'-lanterns. Chilling and Smoky are both quite effective for this. Chilling is a first skill slow, or has either first skill slow or it's his passive. But he also brings a crit rate and a speed buff, and Smoky brings multi-hits and slow debuff, I believe. With Chilling, you can also run his Dungeon Leader skill if you need accuracy to land your debuffs. Something I didn't mention stat-wise, accuracy, I suggest between 30 and 40% usually. Running more is not harmful. Running less usually is, but in my personal experience, I've done best with about 30%. That way I'm not taking too much away from my damage stats, trying to focus more on, having a solid amount of attack, crit rate, and crit damage, and HP, and then accuracy comes fifth for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely attest to that. I have one of my units that is currently on a violent focus, my second Lich, violent focus versus violent revenge, just because of the fact that I need the accuracy to make sure I'm landing those harmful effects. All these compositions that Onceinluv is recommending is definitely crucial, but if you don't have the accuracy to land the specific debuffs to speed up your runs or whatnot, nothing's going to work for you, so for sure.
Yeah. Few more mentions for units. Strong leader skill units, Perna, Teshar, Lucian, in my opinion. Lucian has the wave clear plus the attack leader skill. Teshar has crit rate leader skill plus wave clear potential resets. Perna, you have attack leader, plus you can heal your entire team. Pretty safe, actually, when you run Perna. I run my Perna on speed, crit damage, attack. It's not very well runed, but it works very well for a safe 2-minute team using Fuko. Excuse me for that. Using Perna, Colleen, Rauk, Adrian, and Fuko. That team was a solid 2-minute safe team with pretty average runes. My Necro runes are not very strong. They haven't been runed well. But I'll be working on it in the future. Other mentioned units, Lisa, Emma, and Rauk, and Galeno, whatever his name is, the light lizardman.
Yep.
If you're going to use Glenodon, you need to use Emma with it, in my opinion, and Emma should be max skilled. Ideally, though, I am not a supporter of Emma. I don't think she's worth the Devilmon. If you can skill her without using Devilmon, she could be more effective. But yeah, so she brings glancing. She'll mitigate the HP block because she has a shield heal, and she'll bring the defense buff that helps Galeno do more damage. Galeno also defense breaks, and he runs a light tank, so he's pretty effective. I think that would be a shout out to Brandon 14 Baker for that one because he uses both of them in his team. He uses Lisa, Emma, Galeno, and two other units. But he has a pretty strong Necro team, pretty safe. Lisa, glancing, third skill is a pull attack where you can pull 3 targets and you lower their cooldowns by 1. Your Lisa's already violent because of raids, and she's probably well ruined because of raids, so she can fit in these slots pretty effectively. And then third unit, Rauk. You have defense break, which can proc multiple times based on RNG. You have a team up skill where you will use your first skill that can proc again, plus you pull someone else and lower their cooldowns. And if you kill a unit, you get an extra turn. Okay, I'm finished. Sorry. I was trying to get through that.
No. You're good, man. As always, I really do appreciate all the effort that you put into gathering this information and get it ready for your fans out there. Speaking of which, as we close out the video, we Onceinluv and I have been talking on the side and thought of a great idea for you guys out there. We just put out this 5-part series, and I'm sure that there's some people out there that have maybe not gotten a question answered or whatnot. So one of the things that we want to go ahead and do for you guys is offer you the opportunity to, speak with us on stream live and be able to answer any questions on, whatever topics you might have with regards to these 5 episodes that we brought to the table. So if you guys would do me the honor of taking the opportunity in the comments section down below on the YouTube video to put any questions that you may have, we can go ahead and collect those for you. And then probably after the holidays, Tyler and I can get together and pick a time so that we can get on stream.
Q&A stream.
Do a Q&A stream. So speaking of which, do you want to, should we go ahead and host it on your stream?
Yeah, we can. It's probably going to be easier because we can run a higher quality. Because I'm partnered, I have the quality options and such.
There you go.
And it'll be easier for me to run 2 videos on the screen without dropping quality.
There you go. I like the sound of that. High
that'd be
quality.
Cool.
Right on. Well, all right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, as always, Tyler, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to come on board and doing this. It's been a long time coming, and I've just heard nothing but the best from your viewers as well as my viewers as far as the effort and knowledge you put into that, man. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking me in for this project. You've helped me out a lot with exposure, and you've allowed me to connect with a different part of this community that I really appreciate and I really like. You have wonderful subscribers. You have amazing viewers. Just meeting you in general was really nice.
Right on, man. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this episode of Educate and Dominate Operation Midgame. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's your boy Childish, and Onceinluv with ChildishPlays checking out. Take care, and we will see you next time, guys. We're out.
Cheers, guys.